Welcome to Digitized Spotlight, your lens into the best builders in consumer crypto. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Winnie. On this series, we explore some of the latest trends emerging in consumer crypto and chat with those building at the forefront. In this episode, we dive into creator monetization and music NFTs.
We chat with David, co-founder and CEO of Sound, an on-chain music startup that has attracted over 2,500 artists, including Snoop Dogg and Pussy Riot. I'm excited by blockchain's value proposition for creators: ownership, co-creation, incentivization, and seamless value transfer. So I look forward to digging in with David.
Hey, David.
Hey,
Hi, David.
thank you for having me on today.
Thank you for coming on. Really excited to have you on Digitized Spotlight. So to kick things off, would just be great to learn more about what you're building at Sound.
Cool. So I'm one of the co-founders of Sound. I'm David. We're building tools to help artists, both reach people with their music and then also help artists make money on their music. I always say that there's only two main problems in the music industry. One is getting artists fans, and then obviously helping monetize their fans. And we're particularly passionate about doing so through their music because we think music is one of the most under-monetized, media assets in the world. And we basically build tools for artists to sell music directly to their fans and for fans to directly collect music from those artists.
So I think I read somewhere that you've helped artists make and earn more than $6 million. So for these artists, what are the economics of releasing music on Sound versus more traditional streaming platforms? We can walk us through that. And other than better economics, what else do artists enjoy by releasing on, crypto native streaming platforms than a traditional Spotify or Apple Music?
Yeah, so one of the most bizarre aspects of music, which honestly predates something like Spotify, is that there's always been one fixed price for music, which I've always found really bizarre in terms of if you went to a restaurant and every restaurant had the same price for one item on the menu, that'd be a very weird experience. Menus charge different prices for different items, different restaurants have different prices, based on what they want to set. And so if you think about it, Spotify has people don't realize this, but has a fixed per stream rate, loosely around the 0.003 cents per stream. iTunes was much more explicit about this. It was 99 cents. Everyone's familiar with that. Albums and CDs back in the day were $12, $13. Cassettes, vinyl, they always had one dominant unit price that was kind of standardized. What that basically means is you conform every music listener, regardless of their how much they want to spend, to one dominant price form. And streaming has obviously brought this to the lowest that it's ever been for consuming music. And so today, you basically, because of the 0.003 cents per stream, you need this very, very, very large fan base in order to make any real money off streaming. And so Sound obviously has taken a different approach, which is letting artists obviously set the price of their music, but in doing so, you can kind of give them some control over the size audience that they need in order to make more of a sustainable living off their music. I was very inspired by this experiment that was run 16 years ago by a band named Radiohead that did this experiment called Pay What You Want, where they released their album for free and said, pay what you want for their album in rainbows. Now, granted, Radiohead is a very large artist with a super cult fan base, but I thought that was a really interesting experiment around letting something be free to listen to, but then still creating a way for people to monetize the music. That's something that's stayed in the back of my mind, and honestly, one of the big inspirations behind Sound. So I think in terms of the economics, you need a lot less fans on Sound to make the same amount of money on something like Spotify, which I think is a step forward in the right direction. And then other than the better economics, I think one of the coolest things from the artist perspective, I'd say there's two that I'd call out. One is that artists get paid instantly, money comes in, money gets paid out. Even in today's music world, artists are traditionally paid out 3 to 6 months later, and sometimes people lose money along the way. So the idea that artists are getting paid instantly, obviously money today is worth more than money tomorrow because you can always take that money and invest it or do whatever you want. And then two, artists have full ownership over their audience. Even today, I think people, it's very timely because Spotify Wrapped just happened. Everyone's sharing that to their story. I'm the biggest, Taylor Swift fan or whatever the case may be. But they think that the artist actually knows who their fans are, and they have literally no idea. There's no export button. There's nothing. They have high level demographic data, there's a bunch of people in New York that like your music, but they don't know that their names are Winnie or Amanda. And I think that's something that I think, obviously we provide. So I think it's the owning your audience, and then obviously being able to change the economic model that I think is really, really important, as well as obviously getting paid out instantly. So
The Radiohead experiment is actually quite interesting. I've never heard of that. What they did. Do you have more to share around what ended up happening and what people ended up paying, what the result of that was?
yeah, it ended up being a couple million dollars, and they made, I think, more off that, kind of experiment in the first couple of weeks than they had ever made off any other
Yeah.
album. So yeah, it's a very famous music in the music world example of something that is a very unique experiment, and you've seen like impacts of it in other parts of culture, like Bandcamp, which is a Web 2 kind of music direct to consumer. They do a lot of pay what you want as well. So it's something that's permeated elsewhere, but it's something that's always inspired me as a way for a band. And I think why I was so interested in it is that they didn't restrict the listening. They actually said like anyone can pay whatever you want. And so it kind of maximizes a bit of like the reach in terms of listening, but also still gets the artist paid. So definitely like not a perfect model, but I think there's a lot of interesting threads to pull on there.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And the value proposition obviously is really compelling. So I'm curious how you were able to kind of deliver that to creators and scale, since like I think I read from December 2021, you had, one song and 25 editions, and then now you have over 250K collectors, over 1.2 million editions minted. So how were you kind of able to get these first artists on and reach these sorts of numbers?
Yeah, I don't have a glamorous story for the first couple artists. I mean, it was a lot of hustle on the internet and just talking to people and seeing who would, sitting in Discords and Twitter DMs and Instagram DMs and just DMing artists to say, hey, would you want to do this? I kind of aggregated a bunch of artists into a Discord, started showing them the early designs for sound, say, hey, would you like it to look like this or like that? So getting real-time feedback. So I kind of had a sense that they were going to use this because I was obviously building it in mind for them. And that was kind of like a core of like how we signed up a lot of the artists originally. And then on the consumer side, like I think there's always been this like demand for like discovering music. Like it's really like one of those goosebumps feelings when you find an artist that like you're listening to for the first time. And the good news is that there's so many talented artists out there that are just like looking for opportunities to kind of get their music heard by more people. And so sound took obviously like a curatorial like a curation approach in terms of like kind of highlighting like artists in the space to kind of kickstart this. And we used a strategy that was like very much like similar to concerts. Another thing that I get a lot of inspiration from. Most of my things come from, the Radiohead example, concerts. There's a few video games. There's a few that we talk about, but concerts, like a lot of times artists will play small venues to like sell it out to then, even though they could sell more, because the narrative of selling out like allows them to kind of graduate to that next. So we started with like a very small set of editions, like 25, and that built a lot of hype around collecting these because it was really hard to collect these, and that brought in more and more people. And so it kind of created this like flywheel kind of effect where artists were coming in, they were making money, collectors were also making money, and kind of graduated.
I saw that you recently added like these forever editions, right? So like almost on the flip side of what you just mentioned, these open edition, free NFTs, the sound, kind of like what made you, what drove you to this product decision and what has the reception been of that so far?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we saw is like obviously as we start to do more and more drops, there's kind of this tension which always kind of exists between like reach and what I would say like scarcity or value. And so I think like if you want to reach, as an artist, like the goal of a song is literally to reach as many people as possible and to inspire as many people as possible. Music, how do you do that with obviously free or very cheap, things? And then two, at the same time, like music is very much like an art form, and how do you actually treat music as something that's like valuable and and collectible, right? And that's obviously something that's going to have to be scarce in nature. And so we've played a lot around with like different minting mechanics that sound, something that we're really passionate about. And we've been thinking about like how do we combine reach and scarcity? Like how do we let artists reach as many people as possible without precluding them from like being able to set the price of their own music? Because as we talked about, today artists don't have any control over that. And so Forever Editions was a way for us to basically like let them kind of like almost like a patronage tier, like it has no value inherently in that it's open forever, but basically let people pay what they want for whatever they can, choose to support. And then the artist can obviously still set the price of their limited edition, which allows them to reach like a more collector-driven audience, right? So it basically creates something for everyone, right? Like even if you only have $1 to spend, you can still contribute to the artist. And $1 is still like, 10, 20x Spotify today. So it's still a step in the right direction. And so it creates this like, I wanted to widen the amount of people that could participate and obviously support an artist, directly.
Back to the Radiohead example.
Exactly.
And what have you seen so far in terms of like how much people are willing to pay? Are they mostly going after the free mint? I guess kind of what's been the reception so far?
Yeah, so the reception has been solid in terms of like it's allowed people to support more drops. Like it's widened the amount of drops that people can support, which I think is really, really important. Like maybe for ones that they're really passionate about, they'll buy the limited edition. For ones that they're, they just want to support and they want to like dip their toes in, they'll do the, forever edition. So I think one thing about the forever editions that I want to clarify is like we have like, what's become like the industry standard in terms of like the mint fee. So the artist is still getting paid on these forever editions as well. It's about like $1. So I think in all scenarios the artist is getting paid. And that's something that's also really important to us, obviously, is like, basically being able to find that balance between like basically getting an artist paid and obviously reaching as many people as possible. So I think ultimately it's a tool in the toolbox that can be used obviously and we're still figuring this out, but to maximize like new games for how to make it fun to collect and support music.
Yeah, I love that. Also, I personally find like with these new protocol rewards, it's a fascinating type of new business model that's very unique to Web3. I saw that you guys recently launched kind of creator rewards where, you kind of incentivize collectors for referring songs to new collectors, right? Curators for referring songs to new collectors, and they kind of earn a portion of that fee that's taken away from you guys versus from the artists themselves. How do the economics for that kind of compare to, what's traditional, and how has the reception been for that from
Yeah,
taking it out?
this is something I wanted to do for a long time, and we've had it in the product for a second. We just rebranded it and kind of increased the amount of rewards that we were doing. So I think one of the things is like compared to like streaming, like this doesn't even exist, and that this is like something that's uniquely exists on Sound in terms of I've always found like we all make playlists on streaming services. They don't get rewarded or valued both socially and monetarily. When I say socially, you can load up the homepage of any music product in the world today, and you won't actually, you won't find any user generated playlists on that homepage. Like you will exclusively find playlists that are generated by that platform or owned by that platform. And so I think there's a big opportunity today to value.
You know why that is, like economically? Do they try to push artists where they have better economics or something?
No, I think it's more on the lines of, I mean, this gets into like the nitty gritty of like the music industry and how it operates. But I think like DS streaming services like want like leverage over labels to say, hey, we run these playlists, because they're always negotiating on rates and royalty. So I think that's part of the reasoning, is like you want to control the traffic. But I think, that's actually an opportunity that I see for us in terms of like, how do we empower? I've always believed in like wisdom of the crowds. And so how do you like empower, as many people as possible to create playlists? And what are those people who create playlists? What do they want? Well, they might want some type of social status. They might want to earn some type of, money. And I think the baseline, the good news is zero because they earn nothing today. And maybe that can be like a hook or a wedge into like how we can get these people to kind of start making playlists or posting on Sound. Because it's honestly like a new experiment in terms of like I grew up around the music blog era, where people were making music blogs, and most of those music blogs are no longer in business because you can't really make money running a music blog. And so I was always interested in like, even though I know music curation has value because it's always been like a way for people to discover new music, it's been very historically under monetized. And I think this is, and it's early days, but it's an experiment in how we actually value music curation, which I think is something that like is deeply rewarding for me as somebody that's like gained a lot of benefit as a consumer of different music blogs, and whatnot in terms of like finding out about my next favorite artist.
And for these rewards so far, I know you just like kind of rebranded them. How have they contributed so far to community and growth?
Yeah, so I think the cool thing is like it kind of operates as like an artist, like almost like street team in terms of like people are like incentivized to share. And I think that's like one thing that I felt really strongly about is like how do we actually like artists are phenomenal, specifically at one thing that nobody else can do, which is making music. And I think the more artists are focused on making music, the better for all, you know, all parties. And a lot of an artist's job today, unfortunately, is not making music. It's like, you know, dancing like a monkey on TikTok, or, you know, promoting it. It's like it become a full-time marketing job. And so I think, you know, one of the really cool opportunities is like, can we get fans or listeners or collectors, whatever you want to call them, incentivized to help the artist and like share their music across the internet. And so obviously, you know, since we've, you know, increased the rewards, you've seen an increase in like sharing on Sound, you've seen an increase in sharing it to Twitter, which I think is something that I think is exactly what we want to be seeing. And now it's like, how do we double down on that and obviously make this like really clear in the product, which I think we can do a better job at in terms of like, this is something that's really unique to Sound. How do we keep capitalizing on this and make this something that is like a, you know, an industry standard at some point?
I love that, the way you said that. It's almost like, how do you incentivize each person to excel better in their role, whether that be artists or creators? How does that work with, since NFTs are, you know, composable across different ecosystems, you can kind of use it across Web3 social. How do you think about, you know, Sound's role and how to incentivize like Sound's role within the broader Web3 social ecosystem, and to kind of have more interesting interoperability across all of that, because it is composable, the music
Yeah.
NFTs?
Yeah. So I think like, I mean, I'd say interoperability is one of the things that like attracted me personally to Web3. Like you can build this audience once and take it wherever you want. And so my hope is that, you know, and we've seen this a little bit, like people can build other experiences on top of Sound, where they can take advantage of the tools that we've built, whether it's the referrals or the contracts or whatever the case may be. I think there's definitely like, we've launched some integrations already to like share to like Web3 social, like, you know, Farcaster or Warpcast and Lens as well. So we're interested to see like how often are people sharing to like these third party social Web3 social networks. And I think that's something that I think is really, really exciting. So I think ultimately like one of the beauties of Web3 is the fact that like when you mint something, it shows up in like 100 different places, due to all the integrations with Sound and wallet providers, etc. And so for me, I think if there's any we need to run a more like thorough analysis of like where all the mints are coming from. But I think ultimately, I know that some percentage of them comes from like third parties. And I think that's something that's really, really cool to me, is like any type of discovery for an artist or for a mint is like net positive for the ecosystem. And so I think that's one of the things, is not like a closed gated system. And there's all these third parties that can plug in and index Sound contracts and show them in their various, you know, apps. So I think it helps, you know, uplift the whole system together, when people can build on top of, you know, things like the smart contracts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. One question I had is, I know you recently announced your acquisition of Soho, which is like a social collector app. And so are you also looking to integrate more social experiences within Sound, or are you more focused on kind of the external ecosystem and integrations?
Yeah, we're definitely interested. I mean, I think it sounds obviously incredibly obvious, but obviously, you know, mobile has is where most people spend most of their time in general. And, you know, I think we haven't really had anyone leading kind of the mobile initiative at Sound. We kind of stitched it together in a very hacky way to kind of get this initial app built off the ground. I had a friend that's a really strong mobile engineer work on it kind of part-time with me. And, you know, just because I wanted the opportunity to work with him, but he wasn't even full-time at Sound. And I think knowing that mobile is going to be a place where we can get people hanging out on the app and, you know, really like, posting about songs, and a lot of the, like, what I would say, like the daily active behavior can come from something like a mobile app. The Soho team was like specific in like really specializing in mobile due to their experience, obviously building Soho and obviously previously at Instagram. And more importantly, we just love the team. And obviously the founder, Omid, and was like, oh, you know, privilege for us to be able to get the chance to work with them. And so, yeah, we're going to be focusing on obviously building out more mobile experiences for the Sound mobile app, which I think is going to dramatically change. And we're super lucky to have them as part of Sound. And yeah, something that I'm really, really, really stoked about. And probably like one of the highlights, if not the highlight of 2024 or no, 2023, knowing that we're going to be headed into 2024 with them. I think, yeah, we're really excited for all the shipping that we're going to be doing together this year.
I'm very excited for that. One thing I always say is like, I'm shocked that there hasn't been a more social experience on a music streaming platform, just because it's so innately like tied together with social, right? Like I think so much of like the way we listen to music and share music, you get to take outside of the app. We share it through text or through, social media. Like, it's crazy to me that it's not built within some of these streaming platforms we're going to use today.
Totally. Yeah, it's also always kind of blown my mind because music
Yeah,
is definitely social. Like you go to a concert, it'd be very weird if you go to a concert by yourself or with one person in the audience. There's
exactly.
all people around you. It's a very social experience. When one of my friends says check out this artist, I basically like always take their advice or opinion.
Mhm.
So peer-to-peer recommendations matter immensely. And so today, like, and you see this like kind of desire for people to show off and brag every year with Spotify Wrap, where people love
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
share their story. So I think it's actually a big today music is like there's like today music is very isolated. Like it's very much like my individual experience.
Mhm.
I think that's something really interesting about how you obviously share music together. And then I think music is very listened in the background today. It's very passive. And I'm like, how do you bring more active experiences where people are actually leaning into like who they're listening or discovering, et cetera?
Yeah, no, I think music is deeply social in that nature. And I feel like Spotify definitely dropped the ball on this, which is interesting. I know in the early days they really try to push for social. I'm actually just like curious why they did make that push as they've kind of scaled. I guess the other thing I was thinking a lot about is with on-chain music still in its early innings, right? There seems to be a lot more experimentation around new on-chain primitives, especially in 2024. How do you guys think about, what's new with and what's made possible now? Because there are a lot more people doing things on chain, a lot more applications on chain, and people kind of indexing things. How do you guys think about experimenting in on-chain music?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch. Like obviously, like there's the token down accounts, and how that could maybe like lend itself towards like albums or mixtapes, which are another music primitive that like I love things that are like used to be popular, but then like didn't have the right business model around it, so then
Yeah.
popular. So I love mixtapes. I love remixes because remixing was a huge part of SoundCloud culture. But then the problem was like everyone was remixing everyone's stuff, maybe without permission. So it started to become like more illegal content. But what if you could build a business model around remixing that benefits both parties and obviously has opt-ins and opt-outs? So there's a whole bunch of things that I think are like very I always think about like what can we uniquely do versus just like putting something on chain for the sake of putting it on chain is less interesting to me. And then obviously like all the account abstraction and wallet stuff has been making it a lot easier to obviously onboard people to the space. And I think that's been something that's really, really cool. I mean, we started on layer one with, you need a wallet to sign in and just seeing the kind of crypto move to the background and creating much more focus on like the actual content and the experience itself, I think has been something that's been super cool for me to see. Because in the day to day, it feels quite slow, but in the like, month to month and the year to year, you can actually like zoom out and see these changes more broadly, which is something that I think is really, really exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And building on that, you like personally launched on Ethereum and have since expanded to Optimism and Base. So I guess what are you seeing in terms of consumer products moving to these layer ones and layer twos from
Yeah. So
Ethereum?
I think like going from layer one to layer two makes clear sense. Obviously, like the fees are tremendous on layer one. And I think I always say like the purpose of why we started Sound was to get artists paid and get artists heard. It's not to like, be spending money on gas fees. So there's a very clear reason to move from a layer one to a layer two. I think within layer twos, right, there's still like this, like, I think there's different flavors for sure in terms of like the culture that exists between what's being minted on Optimism or Base or any of the other chains. But I think ultimately, like especially in the OP set, they're the same underlying technology. So there's less from a technical perspective. It's more of like the culture and the brand and the ethos that surrounds them. But I think I think obviously the low gas fees, and I think due to the incredible hard work of a lot of people that are more talented than me, I think they're going to keep getting lower and lower. And so I think that's something that's really, really important is to build scalable systems that like again allow people to directly support creators and less so about obviously moving money towards Ethereum miners. So that's kind of my take on that one.
Cool. Well, I think just to close this out, David, let's do a few rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
Favorite Web3 musician?
I want to. There's no way I'm answering. I'll say every artist on Sound, but
Who's your
there's so
favorite
many.
child?
There's no such thing.
Okay.
I feel like there's so many artists that have contributed towards the success of sound, and I think ultimately, like I think I've learned an insane amount from obviously, and super grateful that they're willing to kind of like let us, learn and make mistakes and try new things. And so I'm very grateful to any of the artists that have used the product or the tool, especially the ones that have like stuck around. So yeah, there's too many to name on that front.
What's an artist you'd like to join Sound?
This one I can answer. I think on the like electronic side, I mean, very popular right now. I'd love to get Fred again on sound.
Yes.
Because I feel like he's very like experimental with his music, and I think I think the culture of kind of like the space in terms of experimenting and trying weird new things, I feel like would directly appeal to them. And then I think on the like hip hop side, like I think it's somebody like a Playboy Cardi or somebody that's like or like a Little Yachty in terms of like somebody that's like really always experimenting as well with their music and leaking things and dropping things unexpectedly. I think also lends itself. So I think those are a couple that I think
Yeah.
are on our radar.
Like Fred again remixing things on Sound. That could be super cool. Um,
Totally.
what's a new on-chain music primitive or trend that you're excited about?
Let me think about that. What am I excited about? I'm really interested in like the curation side of sound. So I'm really interested in like how do we basically like, when sound started, sound was the curator of sound. Like we chose who got on sound, etc. And I think as we like kind of scaled sound, we've opened up to the public. I think there's no chance that sound can be the curator of sound, or I don't want it to be. I'm really interested in like how do we empower these smaller communities to kind of curate sound in like mini, what I would call like sub communities. And I think that's something that we're really focused on. And how do you build them the tools to kind of manage and monetize these communities in really interesting ways, such as like the protocol rewards. And I think that's something that we're going to be leaning into is like creating more pockets for people because music is social. And I think one of the things that's like really like I'm just like blown away are like the people that like meet other people through collecting music or supporting music, and then have some more taste and become literally friends in real life. And I've made friends in real life because of this. So that's something that I think is really, really rewarding and cool. And I think ultimately, yeah, I think the curation side of sound and creating these communities and handing sound over to its user base, paired with like the mobile social trend that we've been talking about, I think are two things that pair really nicely together and something that I'm obviously really excited about.
Yeah, very excited to see where that goes in 2024. David, great to have you on Digitized Spotlight. Where can listeners find you and learn more about sound?
We're very active on the X Twitter app at sound XYZ underscore, and then my personal is D Greenstein 1 on Twitter. And so any of those two places, they're kind of I still run the sound account pretty much myself. So you're messaging me in both places. So yeah, both of those are great. And thank you guys, as I said, for having me on today.
Thanks for coming on, David.
Thanks for joining us as we chat with David. It's been exciting to learn about how blockchain can improve the bottom line for musicians and empower the community to participate in their success.
Agreed. I also really look forward to seeing how Sound tackles valuing and scaling music curation next. Follow along as we chat with more founders building at the intersection of consumer and crypto. Bye.
Bye.